Ladies and gentlemen, we all fall, we all break, and at some point, we all stand in the rubble of what used to be a relationship, a dream, a version of ourselves. Rise and rebuild isn't about pretending the fall didn't hurt. It's about learning to stand back up with more truth, more courage, and more heart than before. This is not a story of perfection. It's a story of becoming, and it begins with choosing to rise again and again, no matter how many times we've been knocked down. We live in a culture that idolizes rising comebacks, glow-ups, second chances. We love the image of someone standing tall after life has knocked them down. But what we rarely talk about is the part that comes first, the fall, the collapse. The moment where everything we thought we were holding together starts to unravel. This isn't the part that looks good in Instagram captions or TED Talks. This is the part where we're face down in the dirt, questioning our worth, our choices, our strength. And yet, this is exactly where the story of rebuilding begins. Falling is not failure. It's human. It's inevitable. It's necessary. And when we treat it like a mistake to be hidden or rushed through, we lose the most valuable lessons life offers us. There is honor in the fall when we face it with honesty. There is courage in admitting we're not okay. Rising isn't brave unless the fall was real. And pretending you didn't fall, that you're just fine, that nothing happened, isn't strength. It's armor. And armor keeps us disconnected from ourselves and from others. One of the hardest things we can do is allow ourselves to sit in that place of unraveling without immediately trying to fix it, numb it, or cover it up. We're taught to hustle for our healing, to get back up quickly, to turn pain into productivity. But rising too fast often means skipping the most important work, facing the truth of what broke us and why. It takes more courage to sit in the wreckage than to bypass it with toxic positivity. It takes strength to say, I'm not okay right now, and that's okay. There is also a kind of sacredness in the fall, if we let ourselves be open to it. It's a space where our illusions crack and we see what's been real and what's been performative. When things fall apart, we meet ourselves without the makeup, the job titles, the curated lives. We meet the raw, unfinished, fully human version of ourselves. That meeting can be terrifying, but it can also be liberating. In the rubble, we are no longer held together by what others expect of us. We are held only by truth, and from that place, real rebuilding can begin. Falling doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. It means you're human enough to experience life in its full range, joy and heartbreak, hope and disappointment, clarity and confusion. We don't build resilience by avoiding pain. We build it by allowing pain to shape us without hardening us. Every fall offers us an invitation to soften, to learn, to let go of what no longer fits, and to rise with intention instead of image. There's nothing weak about falling. Weakness is in pretending you never did. Strength is in standing back up without pretending it didn't hurt. When we fall with honor, we honor our humanity, and when we rise from that space, not to prove something, but to live more truthfully, we don't just rebuild, we transform. We think about rebuilding ourselves. It's easy to imagine a version of the process that's clean, efficient, and even beautiful. We picture ourselves emerging from hardship, stronger, wiser, and somehow untouched by the mess we just went through. But that image is a myth, a carefully crafted illusion fed by perfectionism and shame. The truth is, real rebuilding is rarely pretty. It's awkward, uncomfortable, and deeply imperfect. It's not about creating a flawless new self. It's about reclaiming the parts of us that are still true and learning to live more authentically, even in the mess. The pressure to rebuild into someone shinier, better, and more put together is often a disguise for shame. It whispers that who we were wasn't good enough, that if we had just been more careful, more disciplined, more lovable, maybe we wouldn't have fallen apart in the first place. So instead of rebuilding from a place of self-compassion, we start constructing a version of ourselves that's designed to be safe from judgment. We aim for polished instead of real. We build for approval instead of belonging. And in doing so, we lose the very heart of what makes rebuilding meaningful. There's no perfect version of you waiting at the end of this. There's only a more honest one. Rebuilding isn't about erasing the pain or covering the scars. It's about integrating them into your story with integrity. It's about choosing to carry your truth with you, not bury it. When we give ourselves permission to rebuild without chasing perfection, we also give ourselves room to breathe, to grow, to heal at a pace that honors our limits. We allow our humanity to exist, unedited. We live in a world that rewards image over authenticity. We are taught early on to curate our lives, to present only the best, most acceptable pieces of ourselves. But when you're in the process of rebuilding, curation is the enemy of healing, because healing requires presence. It requires that we show up in our lives without a filter. It demands that we sit in our discomfort, our grief, our uncertainty, and still believe we are worthy, that we don't have to become something else to deserve love or respect. We can see how perfectionism hijacks tells us that until we're fully healed, we shouldn't speak. Until we've figured everything out, we shouldn't try again. Until we've stopped hurting, we're not ready. But healing isn't a checklist, and readiness doesn't mean being pain-free. Sometimes rebuilding starts while we're still limping, while we're still unsure, and that's not a failure. That's what real courage looks like. Moving forward with the cracks still visible, choosing honesty over performance. We don't need to wait until we have it all together to be worthy of rising. We don't need to meet some invisible standard before we can be seen or heard or loved. The most powerful rebuilds come not from people who have perfected themselves, but from people who have dared to stay real in the face of uncertainty. They come from those who have said, "This is who I am right now, unfinished, in process, still worthy." Let go of the idea that rebuilding has to look a certain way, that you need a grand moment of transformation to prove your progress. Most of the time, rebuilding looks like small steps, quiet days, and choosing not to give up on yourself even when it would be easier to stay down. It looks like making peace with your imperfections and allowing them to be part of your strength, not something you need to overcome. The myth of the perfect rebuild only keeps you stuck, but the truth of an honest one will set you free. Rebuilding yourself requires more than action. It requires presence. And presence in its truest form is impossible without vulnerability. That's the piece most people try to skip. They want the transformation without the exposure, the heal without the rawness, the comeback without vulnerability is not just a nice concept. It's the blueprint of rebuilding. Without it, we're not truly building something new. We're constructing a mask. We're layering over the hurt instead of working through it. We're performing resilience instead of cultivating it. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. We associate it with weakness or oversharing or emotional messiness. But it's not about spilling your story to anyone who will listen. It's about being honest in your experience, even when that honesty feels terrifying. Vulnerability is saying, "I'm hurting," when you've been taught to smile. It's asking for help when everything in you wants to prove you can do it alone. It's admitting you don't have all the answers while still choosing to keep going. In a world that prizes certainty and composure, vulnerability is a radical act. Most of us are taught to hide the very things that need the most light. We're told that strength means keeping it together, powering through, staying quiet about our pain. And yet the paradox is this: the more we hide, the more we fracture. Healing doesn't happen in hiding. It happens in the open, in the moments when we dare to be seen in the middle of the mess, not just at the end of it. Vulnerability is how we rebuild trust with ourselves. It's how we learn to say, "I can be seen in this state and still be worthy." That's what changes everything. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable during the rebuilding process. We create space for deeper connection with ourselves and with others. We stop pretending and start relating. And connection is not a luxury in healing. It's a necessity. We're not wired to do this alone. The people who rise the strongest are not the ones who isolate in silence. but the ones who find a safe person, a safe place, and say, "This is where I am." That act of being witnessed in our truth is powerful. It says, "I trust myself enough to be real, and I trust you enough to hold that with care." Vulnerability also shifts the way we relate to failure. When we rebuild with vulnerability, we're not afraid of making mistakes. We're afraid of not being honest about them. That shift is everything. Because if our rebuild is based on performance or perfectionism, every setback feels like a personal defect. But if we're rebuilding from a place of truth, we can hold those setbacks with grace. We can say, "That didn't go how I hoped," without spiraling into shame. Vulnerability gives us permission to grow in public, to heal in motion, to be a work in progress without apology. It's tempting to think we can protect ourselves and still heal, that we can armor up and still connect. But it doesn't work that way. The armor might keep judgment out, but it also keeps love out. It keeps empathy out. It keeps real change out. Vulnerability is how we open the door. It's not about exposing everything to everyone. It's about telling the truth to yourself first, and then to the people who have earned the right to hear your story. That kind of honesty isn't just brave, it's transformative. Because when we rebuild from vulnerability, we're not just changing our lives, we're changing the way we relate to the world. We're no longer trying to impress, we're trying to live, and that difference is everything. We talk about rebuilding ourselves, we often focus on emotional healing, personal growth, and new beginnings. But what doesn't get talked about enough is how essential boundaries are to that process. Boundaries are not walls. They are the beams of your new foundation. They are what hold your healing together. Without them, even the most intentional rebuild will start to crack under the weight of resentment, burnout, and emotional confusion. Boundaries are an act of self-respect. They tell the world, "I know where I end and you begin. I know what I need to stay whole." A lot of people hear the word boundaries and assume it's about pushing others away. But in truth, boundaries are what make real connection possible. Without them, we're not relating. We're merging, pleasing, performing. We're constantly guessing where we stand in other people's lives and giving parts of ourselves away in hopes of being accepted. That's not connection. That's self-abandonment. And when we're in the process of rebuilding, the cost of that self-abandonment is even higher, because the work of healing demands our full presence, our full honesty, and our full energy. Boundaries protect that work. Setting boundaries isn't always about saying no to others. It's about saying yes to yourself. It's recognizing that you can't heal if you're constantly pouring into people who take more than they give. It's knowing that your time, energy, and peace are not infinite resources. They're sacred. Rebuilding requires you to guard that sacred space fiercely, and that means being willing to disappoint people. It means being willing to be misunderstood. Because every time you choose to honor a boundary, you're choosing your integrity over someone else's comfort. Many of us struggle with boundaries because we've been taught that our worth is tied to how useful, available, or agreeable we are. We learn to earn love by overextending ourselves, by keeping the peace, by never needing too much. But in reality, the most loving relationships are built on mutual respect, not silent sacrifice. When we don't set boundaries, we end up eroding trust, both with ourselves and with others. We betray our needs, and eventually that betrayal turns into resentment. And resentment is the enemy of growth. It doesn't just stunt our progress, it poisons it. During a rebuild, boundaries help us get clear. They help us sort out what's ours to carry and what isn't. They help us notice who supports our healing and who drains it. They give us the strength to walk away from relationships, environments, and habits that no longer align with the person we're becoming. That clarity can be painful. It can feel like loss, but it's also a kind of liberation. Because once we stop trying to fix or manage everyone else's emotions, we can finally start showing up fully in our own life. People might not like your boundaries, especially if they benefited from you not having any. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself, to the version of you who is trying to rebuild with intention, with honesty, and with strength. You owe that version of yourself protection. You owe them space. You owe them peace. Boundaries are the practical expression of self-worth. They're how you say, I believe in the life I'm trying to build, and I'm not going to let anything jeopardize that. Healing without boundaries is like building a house with no frame. You can have the most beautiful materials, hope, courage, vulnerability. But if nothing is holding them up, it all collapses the first time the wind hits. Boundaries are what keep your structure intact. They let you grow without losing yourself. They let you love without being consumed. They let you rise without falling back into the same patterns that broke you in the first place. Shame is one of the most powerful and insidious forces we encounter when we're trying to reach. It doesn't come with loud warnings or flashing lights. It shows up quietly, subtly, often disguised as self-criticism, perfectionism, or that nagging voice that asks, who do you think you are? When something in our life breaks, when we lose, when we fall, when we make a mistake, shame is the first emotion to crawl out of the cracks. It tells us we're not just someone who went through something hard. It tells us we are the problem. And if we're not careful, shame will start drawing the blueprint for our We let shame lead the rebuilding process. Everything we build is rooted in fear. We don't grow because we want to become whole. We grow because we're terrified of being seen as broken. We don't set goals because they're meaningful. We set them to prove we're still valuable. We don't heal because we love ourselves. We heal to avoid judgment. And when fear is the foundation, the structure never feels safe. No matter how far we come, there's always that quiet panic underneath it. What if they find out I'm still not enough? Shame thrives in silence. It feeds off secrecy and isolation. It convinces us that we're the only ones who've ever felt this way, the only ones who've ever messed up this badly, the only ones who don't have it together. And because we don't want to risk being judged, we keep it all. We hide the real story, edit the truth, and present a polished version of ourselves that looks strong on the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. But the moment we speak our shame, out loud, in safe spaces, to trusted people, we strip it of its power. The moment we say, this is what I'm struggling with, we open a door to connection, empathy, and healing. Rebuilding means choosing truth over image, and truth isn't always flattering. It's admitting where we went wrong, what we didn't know, what we ignored, or what we tolerated. But telling the truth isn't the same as shaming ourselves. In fact, it's the opposite. Shame says, you are the failure. Truth says, you experienced failure, and you are still worthy. One strips you down, the other sets you free. When we rebuild with truth, we're not trying to hide our past. We're using it as a foundation for something stronger, more honest, and more sustainable. We have to be careful about the stories we let shame write for us. Left unchecked, it will turn every painful chapter into a character flaw. But when we're conscious, we can take the pen back. We can say, this happened, and it hurt. But it's not the whole story, and it's not the end. That shift, choosing to narrate your life from a place of self-compassion instead of self-condemnation, is where true rebuilding begins. Because then you're not just trying to survive your shame. You're learning to live without letting it lead. Shame doesn't just shape how we see ourselves, it shapes how we show up in the world. When we carry unresolved shame, we tend to shrink. We play small. We hide parts of ourselves. We stay quiet when we have something important to say. We disconnect when we most need connection. But when we build resilience to shame, we show up differently. We stop waiting to be perfect before we participate. We stop needing approval before we take action. We stop letting the fear of judgment determine how we live. Resisting shame doesn't mean denying it exists. It means recognizing it for what it is, a survival response that no longer serves the life we're trying to build. Shame may have helped us stay safe once, but now, it just keeps us stuck. When we choose to rebuild from a place of truth, accountability, and self-worth, we start creating something that shame can't touch. We build not to prove, but to become, and that changes everything. Rebuild is not a return to who you were. It's not about getting back to the person you were before the loss, the heartbreak, the failure, or the breakdown. That version of you was doing the best they could with what they knew. But life has since opened you, stretched you, and changed you. And while the pain may not have been invited, it brought with it an invitation to grow into a more integrated version of yourself. Rebuilding is about becoming, not returning. It's about integrating what you've been through into who you're becoming. The goal is not to bounce back. The goal is to move forward with intention. We are conditioned to long for the before. The time when things felt simpler, when we felt certain, when we were unbroken. But longing for the past, while trying to rebuild in the present, keeps us in a loop of regret and nostalgia. And in that loop, we miss the transformation happening right in front of us. The truth is, the version of you who existed before the fall didn't have the insight you have now. They hadn't been through the fire, they hadn't seen the cracks, or felt the cost of ignoring themselves. This new version of you carries not only the scar, but the strength. Rebuilding means trusting that the experience changed you for a reason. We don't often recognize growth while it's happening. It doesn't always feel like a breakthrough. More often, it feels like fatigue, confusion, grief, and uncertainty. But these emotions are not signs you're failing. They're signs you're shifting. You're not unraveling. You're reforming. And that process demands patience. You won't always know who you're becoming while you're becoming it. But if you stay close to your truth, if you honor what matters to you now, not what mattered to the old you, you will start to see it take shape. One of the hardest parts of rebuilding is letting go of the identity that was attached to your old life. Maybe it was the achiever, the caretaker, the one who always had it together. Maybe it was the one who sacrificed, who avoided conflict, who stayed silent. Letting go of these roles can feel like losing a part of yourself. But often, they were never you. They were who you needed to be, to feel safe or accepted. Rebuilding means choosing authenticity over identity. It means saying, that version of me got me here, but they can't take me where I'm going. Becoming is also about reconnecting with your body, your values, after we've been through something hard, it's easy to stay guarded, to keep living in survival mode. But healing is about more than avoiding pain. It's about learning how to feel safe in your own life. It's about allowing yourself to experience beauty, rest, love, and trust again, even when it feels risky. That's not naive. That's brave. Because choosing joy after heartbreak is not denial. It's defiance. It's saying, pain shaped me, but it doesn't own me. No one can tell you exactly who you're becoming. That's the sacred work only you can do. But one thing is certain. If you rebuild with awareness, compassion, and courage, you won't return to your former self. You'll evolve beyond them. You'll rise not as a person who avoided hardship, but as someone who allowed it to teach them. To break what needed breaking, and to build something more honest in its place. You'll walk forward, not with the need to be who you were, but with the quiet confidence that who you are now is enough. Rebuilding is not a single act. It's a daily choice to rise, to stay present, and to tell the truth about who you are and where you've been. It's about letting go of the illusion of perfection and embracing the wholeness that comes from being real. The journey will ask everything you: vulnerability, boundaries, compassion, courage, and an unwavering commitment to your But what you gain in return is not just a new version of yourself. It's a deeper connection to your life, your values, and your worth. You don't rebuild to become someone else. You rebuild to return to the core of who you've always been. Only this time, without apology,